So I hope you guys are well. I hope if you've got exams coming up, I hope your studies are going well. If you haven't been out in a long time, I hope you're getting some fresh air. I hope you're managing to meet up with people socially distanced, but I hope that things are looking a little brighter than they were just a few months ago. I mean, the sun's coming out and the sky is a little bluer from where I sit anyway. And the world seems, the world seems a little better in some ways now that spring is upon us and now that we're getting this thing under control. But here's the big question. How are you going to get things under control? How are you going to show up and be amazing in your internships? That's the really big question. And look, here's some top tips. We've heard from people. We've heard from Rob Gardner. We've heard from John Sorrell. We've heard from Luke Ellis, Walker Lardy. I mean, a whole bunch of people, Faye Woodhead. And these people are all telling us how we make good decisions and how we show up. And I just want to emphasize a few of the things that we've heard. When you show up, you want to blow away. I mean, you want to blow your employers away. You want them to think, wow, this person's absolutely incredible. And I definitely want to give them a job at the end of this, right? I mean, not everybody is going to be able to say that to you, but you want them to feel that. Like, this has been an amazing experience. So what does that look like? I'll tell you a few things, okay? Show up on time. If you have a meeting and the meeting is in the diary for 10 o'clock in the morning, show up at 9:45. If it's at 9 o'clock in the morning, show up at 9:45. If it's at 8 in the morning, show up at 7:45. Do whatever you need to do to be early. Do not be late. Do not be late. Maybe you're used to turning up, it doesn't really matter, 9 o'clock, 9:30. This stuff matters. It absolutely matters. You keep someone waiting 30 minutes, and I promise you, they will not forget that. So turn up on time, whether it's on Zoom, whether it's in person, at your internships, show up on time. You get given a piece of work to do. Do the piece of work. Maybe it's not your favorite piece of work. Maybe you'd rather be doing something that's a little more, it's a little more technical, or it's a little more mathsy, or whatever. Doesn't matter. Take every piece of work and do it with all your heart, all your strength, all your soul, all your might, as though everything depended on it. Yeah, because people are watching you, and they're watching you closely. They're watching you carefully. And, I would just say this as well. There's this thing about being authentic and about being humble and about realizing that this is a great opportunity. Now, you don't have to come in and be all kind of like, oh, I don't deserve to be here. But on the other hand, you've got to figure out that you're starting at the bottom, and then you're going to work your way up. And this is a mountain to climb. And right now you're right here, and you're going to make your way up. And that's how the whole thing works. We've all been there. I'm going to talk to my guest today, Stuart Breyer, about this. Stu, welcome. How are you, man?
Very well, Dowd. Nice to see you.
Yeah, it's great. Listen, Stu, ladies and gentlemen, Stu is one of my favorite people on planet Earth. And I have a lot of people that I like a lot. So it's really saying something. But I've worked with Stu. He's been my buddy. He's been CEO of one of the companies I co-founded with Rob Gardner. Now, help me out here, Stu. How many years now?
5 years.
5 years. And before that, I mean, you were a key person in the business. You've driven a lot of the strategy. So look, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time out to come and talk to us about your journey and just coming at it and just opening up a little bit this evening. Let's see if we can get through some of our questions. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have Q&A, stick it in the Q&A. Just stick it in there. We'll bring you on. We'll ask the question. Time's going to fly by, so make sure you get your question in early because I'll take them in order. And if you've got comments, stick them in the comments as well. But this is going to be a great, great session. Stu, welcome. Good evening. And look, for a start, you're not even from this country, right? You're from the mighty US of A. So tell us a bit about your journey growing up. Where did you grow up in the US? Are you from LA, from New York, or somewhere else?
Yeah, no, so that is right. I've been in London for the past 14 years, and I grew up in Baltimore, which is in between New York and Washington on the East Coast. So those of you who have seen The Wire, pretty accurate. Stringer Bell, and the rest of the gang. But that is where I grew up. I'm a Quaker, so I went to a Quaker high school, and I'll come back to those Quaker values a bit later. From there, I saw in the invite it went out. I started my working career with a lawn service, and I loved working outdoors, and I loved building my own business. And that taught me hard work. It taught me balancing academics. And I was fortunate enough to go to Drexel University, and I moved to the great city of Philadelphia. And that's really where my journey begins, because that's where I found my love of the English language. It's where I found my love of finance. It's where I found my love of a city and a community and really building a network in Philadelphia. My program was quite interesting because at Drexel University, you had a co-op program. And so it was 6 months of school followed by a 6-month internship. We went back to school for 6 months, then we went to an internship for 6 months, different internships. And I learned a heck of a lot in those internships. I learned what I was good at, what I was really bad at, what I really wanted to do, and what I definitely didn't want to do. An example of something I didn't want to do, I took a job at the Office of the Inspector General at the Department for Housing and Urban Development. And yes, spending 6 months as an auditor, I knew after week 1, I didn't want to do it. Why did I take the job? Because I had travel and I was traveling out to California. That seemed really exciting and luxurious, and 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. But the work was, for me, mind-numbingly boring. It's not what I wanted to do. And I didn't put my best foot forward in that job. And I would say the failures of that job and my failures, my perceived failures of what I didn't do right, set me up for the successes of my second internship, which was at Susquehanna.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about how failures led to success, because I'm really always interested in that. It's the Michael Jordan quote, right? Well, I fail is why I succeed. So maybe talk us through some of those failures and Susquehanna, how you made it there, and yeah, what happened?
Sure. So an example of a failure for me was not submitting reports. And this goes back to something Dowd was talking about earlier. I was low on the totem pole, right? I was the first one in. I was an intern. And so I was given work that I thought was boring, mundane. It was matching files. It was doing due diligence on properties, making sure it matched up to what was in the report. And this all got submitted to the Congress. So it was a really big thing. Congress, yes. But I didn't like the work I was doing. So I was a bit arrogant. I was probably a bit too full of myself. And so I didn't do a good job. It was really a slapdash piece of work. And I remember at the time, the guy running the project, his name was Sam, he pulled me aside. He said, "Stu, I know you can do better. I've seen you do better here for us. And let me tell you something. How you do anything is how you do everything. So if you're cutting corners, if you're missing the detail, if you're not putting in the time, if you're not checking your work, you're not going to go where you think you should and where I think you can." And that was an incredibly powerful message that landed with me.
Yeah. So you end up at Susquehanna.
Yep. So I joined Susquehanna and I was a clerk.
By the way, what's Susquehanna? Just tell everybody so everybody knows what that is.
Susquehanna are a big derivatives trading firm in the United States. So they provide liquidity to the markets and they make markets to help investors buy and sell securities. And they do that on every exchange in the United States and in most exchanges throughout the world. They're a private fund. They probably have founded with about $1 billion in capital, and they leverage that to 20 times to run 20 billion in proprietary capital, which means it's the firm's own money. So it's like working for a big hedge fund.
Yeah.
My first day, I worked on a trading floor. So imagine a huge open floor, 300 traders all packed in, and more screens than I could ever imagine. My job was to get coffee. It was to reconcile positions. It was to coordinate with other traders and to coordinate with our offices around the world. You had to think on your feet. You had to respond. You had to be loud, and you had to learn. And that was probably my biggest learning curve ever in my professional career.
Okay, so then you were Susquehanna, you were still in the United States, and then you come across to the UK, and of course, we end up working together, and that's been a journey. So I want to say 2008?
Yeah, I came to work for you in 2008, so 12 years ago, 13 years.
Yeah, look. Okay, so time's flying. 13 years. That's a long time. And tell us a little bit about your journey then. I mean, because you joined Reddington to begin with, and then of course we created Mallow Street, and you moved across into Mallow Street. Maybe some of the highs, the lows, the learnings, those sorts of things on the journey. You're now chief executive, and I didn't hire you originally to be chief executive, but you've come in and you've did an incredible job doing what you were doing, and now you've ended up as CEO, and it's just an incredible journey that you've had. Maybe tell us a little bit about that, and but as I say, highs and lows.
I'm going to start with lows, and I'm going to end on highs. One of my biggest lows was when I almost got fired from my job at Reddington. And I was probably about 2 months in. I'd been handed a piece of work and I didn't really understand what it was. I didn't ask questions. And this is another key learning for everybody. If you don't understand something, ask the question, get the clarity, and write it down. Here are my notes that I wrote and typed up. And I take notes all the time to remind myself. I have a pile of notebooks to my right-hand side that I fill with every call, every meeting I'm in, because it helps me commit it to memory. If I don't understand something, I ask and say, hey, Dowd, can you just clarify that second point? Are you expecting something like this or something like that? Oh, okay, and then he'll clarify it for me. I didn't do that in this piece of work. I kind of said, yes, 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 walked away, and very quickly realized I was way in over my head. I didn't understand what I was doing. I'd committed to, I'd said yes to something I didn't fully understand that I could deliver. And that ended with a conversation of getting some pretty tough feedback. And I think it's important to hear feedback because it changes you, it galvanizes you. Because remember, when you're getting feedback, it's not because the person's angry or they want to destroy you or they want you to make you feel really bad. They're trying to give you pointers. They're trying to help you improve. And if you hear feedback through that lens, it can be transformational.
Okay, so everybody, I'm going to fess up. Okay, so that conversation, we haven't rehearsed this, by the way, but that conversation with Stu very early on, that was with me. So I still remember that, Stu, and I remember grabbing you and just saying, Stu, you clearly seem like a great guy, but I don't think this is going to work. And do you remember you remember it, right?
We were in Starbucks. I remember it very well.
I remember that conversation, and I was just like, I think, it's not going to work out, so I might as well, let's do this thing early. You remember what John Sorrell says about having direct conversations early? So I thought, okay, I better have this conversation early with Stu. And I was like, I don't think it's going to work. And you were like, you're firing me. And I was like, well, yeah, basically. And then you said, look, Dad, give me a chance. I want to make this work. Remember that?
I remember I said, I want to make this work and I will do everything in my power to make this work. So give me a chance. And you trusted me and you gave me that chance.
Yeah, I did trust you. Yeah, I did. Keep going.
And the important thing here, everyone, is if somebody gives you that trust, you have to repay it 10 times. You have to always repay trust and prove why you're trustworthy. So if I say I'm going to do something, deliver, always keep your word, always communicate. And if you can't do something, tell people why. Always be open and transparent. It goes back to some of my values as an individual, which is transparency, being trustworthy, being honest, and empowering people. Those are some of my core tenets that I live my life by.
Yeah, totally. And look, of course, I co-founded both Reddington and Mallow Street with Rob Gardner, who you guys have seen. And if you haven't seen, you should definitely go on the channel, 10,000 Black Interns, and check him out because he does a great talk and he explains some of the things that you should do. But it was Rob and I who co-founded it. And Stu, I've got to say, when you say repaid that trust, you've repaid it, forget 10, you've more like 100, more like 1,000 times. So I just want to say publicly how incredibly grateful I am. I know Rob would say the same thing if he was on here. But what does that look like? Well, I mean, you have kind of, you've done an incredible job at Mallow Street, helping to get that whole thing off the ground. But in addition, what I've loved about what you've done is you haven't just done Mallow Street, you've done other stuff. In fact, 10,000 Black Interns is a classic example where I'm telling you guys, ladies and gentlemen, if it wasn't for Stu, we would not be here in this good shape that we are, because I mean, you were abroad and, the time distance difference was like enormous. And I think at one point you were getting up at like 4 o'clock on a Saturday morning for calls. And I mean, you were going like above and beyond, because I think you had a day job, which was running Mallow Street, and you were also doing this. So that's what it looks like, right? It's about commitment. I mean, Stu, tell us about, because you are one of the most committed people I know. You are super committed to your job, to what you do, to delivering over and beyond. And where does that commitment come from? Do you learn that? Is that just something you've always had?
It's a good question. Commitment for me comes from, I always go back to the ideas of grit and resilience. And grit and resilience are what make commitment. And why do you commit? You commit to something because you're passionate about it and because you love it. And there are two types of people in this world, I think. There are those who run towards success or those who run away from failure. And I've always been somebody who runs towards success. Let's try to make it happen. If somebody gives me the big, hairy, audacious goal. It's not, that's moon on a stick stuff we can't do. It's, well, how do we build the rocket ship? And the moon is interesting, but let's go to Mars and let's leave the Milky Way and go to another galaxy. It's how do you think big and how do you execute on that, I guess is my crucial point.
Yeah, I think as well. I mean, I'm thinking about some of the times we've had together, Stu, just trying to, with the team, of course, because we've got there's a whole team who make Mallow Street what it is. But some of the times when, over 13 years, there have been times which have not been easy on the journey in terms of just running out of time, literally running out of time on a project, or cash flow isn't what you would have thought it should have been or wanted it to be, or our summits. We put on these amazing events, ladies and gentlemen, called Mallow Street Summits, and we've had some interesting times with those, because you're putting on a major event. You've got some serious people turning up to attend the summit. You've got speakers that you've got to coordinate. You've got asset managers who are coming to deliver a talk. You've got the organization of the venue. You've got the travel. You've got, do you remember that time when we missed the train?
Yes. Oh, yes. Not only us and 20 other people.
Yes. What happened? What did we do? Remember that? We were coming back we were in Cheltenham?
We were in Cheltenham. We were coming back and we missed the train, and other people were missing meetings, and everything was suddenly canceled.
By the way, it wasn't our fault we missed the train, right? You remember what happened? Something you just could not plan for, which was the coach driver had never driven that coach before, and instead of turning left out of the venue, he turned right.
Oh,
and then he ended up. Do you remember? And then just didn't know where he was. He got lost. Like, how do you can't legislate for that? And suddenly everyone has to be back in London, and everyone's stuck, and we missed the whole train. In the end, we fixed it because another train came and we did some cool stuff. But I feel like that's been a metaphor, Stu, for a lot of what we have done, right? It's a lot of it's innovation and thinking on your feet. Let's talk about that a little bit. What's that look like for you? Just when you deal with, when a situation comes towards you and you're like, I've never seen this before. What do I need? Like exactly that, right? 20 people, 40 people, whatever it was we had. We've missed the train. We didn't know the coach driver had never driven the coach before.
Yeah.
How are we supposed to know that, right? We just rented the coach and the guy turned up. He'd never driven the coach to that place before. Let's talk a bit about innovation and thinking on your feet.
Innovation and thinking on your feet is important, because when something happens that you're not expecting, which is every day, you have to do a couple of things. You have to remain cool, calm, and collected. You have to think with a clear head. You have to consult and listen to other views. But as a leader, you have to be decisive. You have to make a decision and go for it. The interesting thing about leadership is, once you're CEO, if you put in the chat, everybody's going to put Chief Executive Officer. I think CEO stands for something more along the lines of crisis management, extinguishing fires, and originating ideas. Because that's what you have to do. Because when things cross my desk, it's the last resort. Something's happened and here it is. And every 15 minutes of my day is another thing that I have to solve. Yeah. And it's just kind of a conveyor belt sometimes.
Yeah. What I like about you, Stu, very quickly, just to jump in, is, like everybody else, you have lists, right? So, I don't know how you do it, but every day, by the way, you start early, right? I don't know what time you get up, but it always feels to me like you're always there, right? So, I don't know, what are you going to get up? It's 5:30 or something? What time are you up in the morning?
Yeah, I try to be at my desk working by about 6:30. I know people are like, that's madness. Why would you do that?
That's how you get so much done, right? That's how you do what you do.
Yeah, between 6:30 and about 8:15, that's when I don't have all the inbound traffic. That's when I can do my thinking. That's when I can really plan out my day. And the other thing I always do is take the hardest thing you're going to do in that day and do it first. Always tackle the hardest thing. Know when you're at your best.
Is that why you always call me first thing in the morning?
Of course, always. Always have the conversations that are going to be of the most value, or the most difficult to tackle, or the things where you need proper thinking space and headspace. Yeah. Do them first.
Yeah. But then what happens? Because you must just have a long list that you just grind through, right? This is the same thing that Jonathan Sorrell was talking about, which is the idea that in an intense day, you've got to be organized. You've got to make sure you've got lists and just get on and get through it. Is that fair? Is that what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I write. So here is my notebook, everybody. That shows you everything that I have to do. It's what I'm doing with my team, what I'm doing with my executive team. I have a parking lot, which are things that are great ideas, but I'm not going to do right now. What am I doing for the board, and what's happening today? and you just bounce between those lists and you prioritize what's urgent versus what's important. And you just graph those out, and things that are urgent and important, those are the things you need to get done today.
Yeah.
The other thing that I try to do with my days, I try to spend half my days listening, because you have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. Listen to the team, connect with the team, listen to the feedback, listen to what people are saying. I was able to do 10,000 Black interns because I have an amazing team of 18 people behind me.
Yeah.
They're the ones who deliver the business. They're the ones who work with the clients and deliver excellence every day. And I think it's important, going back to the lift as you climb concept, to always pull people up. My biggest priority when I get up every day is, how am I going to train and mentor the next set of leaders of Mallow Street? How am I going to invest in their development? What have I promised to do, like Faye said in the session the other day? And can they meet me halfway? Because that's the big piece of the contract, everyone. I'm willing to invest in you always and as much time as you need. But are you going to meet me halfway? Come prepared to a meeting. Do your research. Understand the questions you want to ask. But if you're going to give time, use it wisely of people. Because time is the one precious commodity that we all share.
Yeah. So look, I mean, ladies and gentlemen, you are listening here to some serious gold dust. Okay. This is stuff that you want to write it down or watch this again, show your friends, share it around, because you might be thinking, well, this is what you do once you become CEO. It's not what you do once you become CEO. It's how you become CEO. This is stuff that you start doing early. If you can start doing this stuff, taking these points on board, and you can start embedding this into the way you work, like getting up early, it's a massive thing. You don't have to get up at 5:30 in the morning, but be early, start early, right? You don't want to be getting up, or thinking about getting up. If you think getting up at 9 o'clock is early, then, you haven't figured it out yet, okay? You want to be getting up early and get the day going. That's how successful people do. Successful people wake up early. I'm not saying they go to bed at crazy o'clock, but they get up early and they get the day underway, and they have a plan for what they're going to do. They don't just sit at their desk and go, what am I going to do today? Doesn't work like that. So Stu, I mean, give these guys some advice. They're going to be coming into their internships very soon. It's like literally a few weeks away. How do they blow the doors off and be people who, across the piece, everybody says those guys were great? This person who showed up was amazing. Just a few kind of tips about what you would be looking for, and from your own career, what you would advise.
Sure, it's an excellent question. So a couple of things that I would advise for those starting your internship. Dress appropriately. I'm wearing a shirt. It's a bit chilly here, but I have a jumper on. And I have good posture. Show up as you want to be heard. And always be present. Always listen and always have a conversation. Pass it back and forth, because that's how you develop the rapport and the relationship with somebody. Be early. I forget who, I think it was Luke, who's CEO of Man, made the point, just get there 15 minutes early before everyone else. It gives you a chance to clear the day and be prepared. And it's a very clear way of demonstrating commitment. Something I do every day, at the end of every day, and I've always done it, I ask myself 3 questions. What have I learned today? What can I do better? Incremental improvements. What are the little things I can improve on for tomorrow? And what do I want to get done tomorrow? 3 questions, ask yourself every day, and it helps you get in the mindset. So for your internships, these are going to be 6, maybe 8 weeks. Map every day. Rob Gardner said this, and I really, really, really hope you take it to heart, because it's the most important thing you can do. Map every day. Who am I going to meet? What meetings do I have? What projects am I going to complete? How can I prepare for them? And how can I add value? People, there are problems across every organization you're going to come into, challenges you're going to see, things that can be improved. Going back to what crosses my desk every 15 minutes, I love it when somebody comes to me and says, Stu, we have a problem, but I have a solution that I think we should look at. And here's how the solution works. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, what do you think?
Totally agree. Completely agree with that. It's all very well bringing a problem, which most people do. But I have a problem, but I've thought about what the solution might be. It's just a different game, right?
Yeah. Always be somebody who's solution oriented. Always have an idea of what you can do to improve, even if it's the small things. Because ladies and gentlemen, it's the incremental improvements that are going to add up. Across an organization, if you change everything, make it a bit more efficient by 1%, and those little incremental improvements and do it 1% every day, you can do the math where it's going. You're going to have significant step changes in the organization. Same thing for all of you. Forgive yourselves for the mistakes that you're going to make in your internship. Oh, I said the wrong thing to them. Oh, I should have asked Ella this question. I wasn't quite prepared for that. I didn't do my reading. Okay, well, those are things you can do better tomorrow. And what's the one thing you're going to change when you go in tomorrow that's going to make a difference? I'm going to get to every meeting 10 minutes early, be in the room, have my papers out, and be ready to ask questions, take notes, and learn. Be a sponge in this internship, because you're going to get exposure across an entire organization, an entire ecosystem, an entire culture. That's an amazing opportunity. So it's my humble ask that you don't blow it, and you take everything we're saying and put it into practice. And no, you're not going to get everything right. And no, that's fine. Going back to my first point, learn from your failures. Understand why you failed, which is fine, and apply that to make it a success next time.
What I like about you, Stu, as well, is that not only do you get stuff done, but I think you very much share my philosophy, which is that there's always an answer, right? There's always a solution to literally every problem. And if you think about what happened at Mallowstreet, which is the company where you're CEO, at the start of last year, when the pandemic hit, we were potentially in major crisis, right? Because our business was taking people away and running these events. That was at least a large part of it. And suddenly we couldn't do that anymore. We couldn't go anywhere. In fact, we literally couldn't leave our house, right? But we managed to pivot, we managed to restructure, and we managed to go online. And in fact, in many ways, the stuff we do now is even more sophisticated than what we used to do, because we can listen to conversations, we can analyze them, we can feedback. I mean, there's a lot of stuff you can do on Zoom that you can't do when you're in person, which kind of works both ways. And so that was an example, right, of rebuilding the whole business and pivoting, right, in an instant.
Yeah, talk about thinking on your feet. We were very fortunate in some ways to have a China business. So back end of January 2020, we heard about this pneumonia-like thing from Wuhan. We started thinking and we were starting to follow it. By mid-February, we had worked it out that this was going to be a significant issue. And I very clearly remember the day on the 6th of March when I sat down with the team and I said, we're all going to work from home. We're going to try it for a week, but let's get prepared to be in here for the long term. I remember talking to our leadership team and saying, let's imagine a world where we don't see each other in person for the rest of the year. After they picked themselves up from laughter, which was a very fair response because we didn't know what was going to happen, we started coming up with a plan. You have to execute with laser sharp accuracy, focus, and diligence every day in order to make it happen. Because at Dowd's point, half of our firm's revenue disappeared overnight from an in-person events business. And by the end of the year, we had retained the full team. We continued to hire and invest in the business.
We didn't put anyone on furlough. No one went on furlough.
Didn't use furlough. We even made a small profit. And there was a birth of several small, amazing business divisions inside of Mallowstreet. So it forced innovation. So in many ways, the real crapness of COVID and everything it's brought, we've tried to make it into a huge positive. And I think that's a lesson for me and for all of you to think about. When something doesn't go the way you thought it was going to, the military has a great statement saying, no plan of attack, of battle ever survives first contact with an enemy. And I think that's a lot about strategy. Sometimes it doesn't work. You have to think on your feet.
It's exactly like Mike Tyson said, right? Everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth.
Yes.
Which is exactly the same point, right? And boy, did we get punched in the mouth, right? I mean, from a business perspective, by all the events of last year. But no, phenomenal surviving, and a lot of it was planning, right? A lot of it was, I think it was even further back. I think it was December 19. We started hearing about this and started putting things in place and saying, what if we have to go online? So innovation, huge, grit, resilience. Like you say, if things don't go your way and you're like, oh my word, what do I do now? in my own mindset is in every situation, and you'll know this, Stu, because we've worked together a lot, is there's a way out of this. We just got to figure out what it is, right? There's always a way out of everything. You just got to work out what the plan is. I think it was Alexander the Great, was it, who said, find a way or make a way. And that's very much my philosophy, and it served me well over the years. But here's the crucial thing I've discovered is you can't do it by yourself. So for me, I can't do anything without key people being in place. And you're one of those key people, Stu. Without you, candidly, a lot of the stuff that we've been able to get done would never have got done, because you make stuff happen and you get things done in a very particular way that works very well for Rob and for me. And you're amazing in that space. But what it shows is that a team is absolutely crucial. And I want to land that message with you guys as well who are watching this. There's a tendency to think it's about you being the superstar and you've got to knock the lights out and you're the intern and you're the person they're watching. In reality, you're only as good as the team that you're in, and you're only as good as the other people that you make look good as well. You want to make other people look good. Let's talk about that for a second, Stu. The business of, it's not about you, it's about making everyone do well in the team.
Yeah, I mean, this is a huge point, Dowd. It's not about ego. Everybody has to check their ego at the door. It's not about ego. Firms don't care about ego. They want success as a team. And a couple of very tangible points in how you do create an environment for that success, I'll say. The first is be prepared. Do your homework. Be very prepared. Rehearse, practice, go through it, do it again, take the challenges, ask the left field questions. So when I'm preparing for a presentation, I prepare. The shorter the presentation, the longer I prepare for.
Yeah.
And prepare for every eventuality. And then what happens? You have the conversation or the meeting or the pitch or whatever you're doing, and you walk out and you're like, that was so easy. That was so easy. That was a walk in the park. But it's not an accident. It's a walk in the park because you prepared and you invested.
Yeah. And by the way, you're hearing this, ladies and gentlemen, from everybody, right? Whether it's Rob Gardner, John Sorrell, Stu Breyer, everyone's telling you the same thing, which is it's about the prep. And you don't have to be a black belt ninja to prep. You've just got to be you to prep, right? Just take the time, set it out from 6 until 9. I'm going to be prepping. Don't disturb me. Turn everything off. Turn your phone off. Turn your WhatsApp off. Turn everything off and just prep and get your head down and just learn and learn and learn. By the way, you should already, if you've got your internships, which a lot of you have, you should already be prepping the firm you're going to be going to, right? Don't wait till you get there to start figuring stuff out. You should be thinking about it now. Stu, listen, I'm going to pull in some questions because time is flying as always. Adnan, I'm going to pull you in, and you've got a question about being curious. And then I'm also going to bring in Adadajola, and you ask a great question to Stu about nearly getting fired, but then becoming the CEO. So, which is definitely the biggest jump that you can make, I would say. I think getting fired and then becoming CEO, that's a bit of a jump, right? So how did you do that? And so let's see if we can get Adnan in. Let's see if we can get Adadajola in. Dazola, we've got you in, so let's take you off mute. And Adnan, we've got you as well. So let's go with you first. Dazola, do you want to ask your question? We got to unmute you first. There you are. Good to
hello. Hello, everyone.
Hey. You weren't expecting to be on screen, right? You didn't know I was going to pull you in. There you go. That's why. Be prepared, everybody. Be prepared. Okay.
Yes. So my question, I was just thinking what Stuart said about, almost getting fired. And then, I was just wondering, because I put myself in the shoes, and I was wondering how did you, what did you do differently? How did you go from almost getting fired into, becoming the CEO? And how did you handle your emotions at that particular period?
An excellent question. And it was a 7-year journey in between Conversation A and being CEO for me. And I think my key learnings there were a number. The first is hear the feedback and respond to it. And I heard the feedback. I felt it was unfair, and unfair is probably the wrong word, but I felt I could do better. And I knew, and I believed in myself that I could do better. And that's where the point of trust and says, trust me, let me do better, and I will show you how I can do this, and I will demonstrate it for you. so that was kind of my first learning. I guess my second learning of it is when you expand and you grow and you start having a team of people with you, it's how do you interact with them? How do you meet everybody halfway? How do you learn from them? But also how do you teach? And how do you listen as well as how do you critique? And I'll just say something quickly, it's slightly off piece, but on mentors and mentees, I'm fortunate enough to have a number of mentors. I have a coach. I also have a bunch of mentees. And I can tell you one thing, I learned from everybody who I work with. The mentees who I'm mentoring, they teach me stuff every day. And it's amazing. They have a different perspective, a different view on things. And in your mindsets, as you're going into your internships, think about that process. Every conversation is an opportunity to learn, to get somebody's unique perspective, to hear from them. So that goes back to my idea of being a sponge. The more you listen, the more you position yourself to be a linchpin, to be that integral part of the firm, know what's going on. That's you're really going to go places.
And let me just jump in and make this point as well, because Adadazola, I mean, I remember when we had you on here, I feel like must have been now a few months ago, and you were saying, oh, I get so nervous, and the idea of being on screen wasn't something that you wanted to do. And then tell us a little bit about, I have a feeling that you were on CNN, right? What was that? Or CNBC, let me get it right. I have a feeling you were on CNBC. What was that about?
Yeah, it was it was a great opportunity to start with. Thank you very much. And yes, it was about, just talking about my journey, how I, came about applying into 100 Black Interns, what my journey has been like, my experience has been like with 100 Black Interns. And yeah, it was incredible. It was a good, practice to sort of get myself out there and, just, get over these nerves and just be myself.
Yeah, it was incredible because you was someone who would never have dreamed that you would have gone on to literally global TV, and then here you there you were, you just did it. How did it go down? Did you tell your folks? Were they like, oh man, look at that?
Yeah, I did. Everyone watched it and it's like, oh yeah, that's that's all.
Fantastic. Yeah. It just goes to show. So thanks so much. I mean,
thank you.
Keep going. You're gonna, I know you're gonna fly high. We're gonna go to Adnan, and just Adnan, get your question as well.
Hi, my name is Adnan. I'm a final year university student at Hertfordshire studying economics, and I'll be interning at Goldman Sachs. My question was, I'm generally like a very curious person. I get super addicted super easily, very quickly. If I'm learning something, I need to know everything. How can you sort of ask questions without coming across as pushy or overbearing, or can you just leave me alone? That was generally my question.
No, an excellent question. How do you ask questions without being a burden and annoying the person you're working with? I think it's great to be curious, and absolutely be curious. And I always encourage people to be curious. So whatever the project that you're working on, figure out what information you can gather for yourself, because your curious nature is going to find it. And as you start to put the pieces together, where the real value add is when you have the conversation with somebody to say, I'm just thinking about this. I understand X, Y, and Z of the process, but how are A and B related? Because I thought it should be an A and C relationship. I'd love to understand what that looks like. So you've just done a number of things there. One, you've shown that you're curious and you've been your authentic self. Two, you've done the preparation and homework and research. And the third piece is when you're engaging with somebody, you're showing and demonstrating to them, I care, I've done my research. And I would love to know your insight, because that's the value add. And let me tell you, they'll make time every day for you for that type of question. Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Totally agree with that. And it's amazing how many people come with a question, but they actually could have done some meaningful percentage of that homework themselves. So like Stu says, you go as far as you can, and then you just check, am I going in the right direction? Am I thinking about this the right way? And you can tell as well from the person who you're talking to whether or not they think you're being, is that you hassle or not. So, and ask more than one person, just triangulate it. So great question. Love University of Hertfordshire. I'm actually a governor on the University of Hertfordshire. So
yeah, I know. That's how I found 100 Black Interns. The university actually circulated it to us.
Great, 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 great. Well, absolutely brilliant. Delighted that you are on it. That is a very, very cool thing. Okay, we are going to let Adnan and Adedasala go back into the crowd, and Stu, it's going to be you and me. And I am just going to read you out a few of these questions as we come up to the 45-minute mark. So question one, how do you like to plan flexibly? Like, how do you do, how do you plan things? You've got all these things you've got to do. Somehow you've got to plan it. How do you approach it?
Yeah, a good question. You approach it with the understanding and humility that your plan is not going to work that day. So I have to understand that things are going to come in from left field, and you're going to have to deal with them. You're going to have to do it efficiently, but with care. I like to on my list, I have 10 things that I really want to get done today that are urgent and important, and are things that are going to be meaningful, impactful to other people. That's my criteria. Is it going to be meaningful and impactful to other people and help them? Because the other piece of my job is clearing the roadblocks and allowing other people to do their job more efficiently.
Quick question for you, Stu. You talked about urgent and important, which you might think are the same thing, but they're not, right? So something can be urgent, like you've got to do it now. They're going to cut off the electricity unless you call them now and tell them, please don't cut it off, right? But then there's also important, which is it's important, but it's not like I have to do it right now. How do you approach urgent versus important?
Yeah, so I have a very clear litmus test for urgent. Urgent is there going to be a very negative consequence if this is not actioned immediately? And that's what urgent is. Can it wait till tomorrow? Can somebody else do it? Can I pass it down? Then it moves from the urgent category. Important, it can be important on a whole bunch of different levels. So it could be important from a very long-term strategic element to the business. It could be important to somebody else, but maybe not important to me. So how do I recognize what's important to others and meet them halfway with that? So it's just a litmus test of asking a couple key questions.
And what's great about that, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, is you should approach your career that way. You should approach your internship that way. So you'll be given something to do today. It needs to be done today or in 24 hours time or whatever. And that's urgent because you've got to get it done. Then there's something that's going to take 3 weeks to do. That's kind of urgent, but important. And then there's the long-term stuff, which is really, you're setting down a framework so you are going to be successful in the long term. And a lot of people don't pay attention to the long term. They just do what's in front of them. So you want to be operating these 3 different time horizons all the time. Short term, what do I got to do now? Medium term, what have I got to do so that it doesn't sneak up on me in 2 or 3 weeks time and I've got a problem? And then long term, relationships, social networking, that kind of stuff, right? How do I make contacts? Stu, let's talk about that, because you and I are both, we know a lot of people, we're very connected. You run Mallowstreet, which is all about social networking and social capital. Talk just very quickly, we're going to wrap in a second, but let's talk about social.
Sure. And one point to what you were saying earlier, Dawid, in the long-term projects, candidates, think about how you would approach your dissertation. How would you approach a thesis? How would you approach your final project? It's that type of mindset. Networks, social capital, absolutely paramount. It's why I'm here today. It's because you just get to know people. And I was a shy child. I'm not a natural extrovert. I don't really like being on screen. I don't want to go on stage. So you have to practice those things that you're not comfortable with is the first point. The second point is my networks give me a couple of things. It gives me great perspective. It gives me incredible insight. And it gives me an amplification to understand what are the possibilities that are out there. But networking is really easy. Hi, how are you today? I'd like to, what do you do? I'd like to know a bit more about you. Very simple questions you can ask people. And you don't have to have a deep and meaningful conversation with every contact you make. Just do a lot of listening, ask a couple of key questions, and then go back home, go back to base, and start working out what you can do with what you can do with your network. But it's probably the biggest single takeaway. If you all do nothing else from this program, come out as a cohort for the class of 2021, that is going to be a network for life for you. And I can't land that point hard enough. You have an amazing network of over 400 interns across 200 investment management firms in the city. That in and of itself is worth its weight in gold. So make the most of it. Use the WhatsApp chat, use the LinkedIn group, connect with one another, have conversations, because it's those small conversations today that you're going to connect in 10 years' time, and you're going to look back and say, this was my home. This is where I got started.
Stu, we're going to wrap, but tell me a little bit about your values and your purpose. Like, what drives you? What gets you out of bed at that ridiculous 5:30 hour? Just what is, what is it?
I want to make a difference, and I want to see change in the world. I think you have to be the change that you want to see in the world. So for Mallow Street, our community looks after the collective pensions of 19 million people here in the UK. And they're making decisions about what they're going to do with that retirement. That's a huge responsibility. And we believe in a better retirement for everybody. For 10,000 Black interns is totally different. I know what it's like to be a minority. It's not easy being an openly gay CEO in the City of London, but I've walked that journey. And for me, understanding that everybody has a unique journey and what it's like to be in a different space to everybody else, but creating the opportunity for people, I think that's incredibly important. And that's why I get out of bed for this program, to make a difference for everybody who I can.
Yeah, that's incredibly powerful, Stu. And I can't tell you, you've done so much for 10,000 Black interns, 100 Black interns from Mallow Street, for Reddington back in the day when you used to work there. I mean, everything I've ever got involved in the last 17 years, whatever it is, 15 years you've been a part of it. Now I can't even do my maths. 2008, 2020, 13 years.
13 years.
13 years you've been a key part of. Like everything I've done the last few years, you've been a massive part of. So I just want to say thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Give it up for Mr. Stuart Breyer, one of the most influential, connected, strategic, and yet humble guys you're going to meet, right? I mean, I promise you, without Stu, we would not be doing what we're doing. I certainly would not be doing what I'm doing. I wouldn't be where I am. So, dude, thank you very much indeed, ladies and gentlemen. If you've got questions, you know where you can reach Stu. You can.
My pleasure.
Connected to you. They can reach out to you on LinkedIn, whatever. But Stu, I want to thank you again for being so open and for sharing all this powerful stuff. Love you to bits, man. Take care. Speak soon.
My pleasure. Take care. Bye-bye.